in nature. All property on the grand list is assessed as of October 1st each year at 70% of its market value. Our primary mission in the assessor's office is to discover, list, and value. When it comes to discovery and, for example, real estate, we rely primarily on building permits, map changes, and those sorts of documentation within the office. The building department uses a software product called View Permit, so we have access to that, so we can see when permits are being issued, when inspections are done, and we use that software to efficiently follow up on building permits throughout the year. With respect to personal property, we canvass the major business commercial areas in town each year. We also rely on trade names that are filed in the town clerk's office. We look at newspaper articles, advertisements, and we also receive motor vehicle records from the state DMV with respect to the motor vehicle component of the grand list. With respect to valuation, motor vehicles and personal property are updated on an annual basis. We send out personal property declarations each year. Businesses then fill out the declarations and submit them to us. And so we have staff that, in my office, that looks at each declaration and processes it every year. We also receive lists from the state DMV with respect to motor vehicles. And we get one large list of vehicles, over 27,000, which reflect vehicles that are owned by residents or businesses in town as of October 1st. And those are billed in July. And then we get what we call a supplemental list that reflects purchases of vehicles after October but before August. And we bill those out at the end of the year in December. So most of the vehicles that we get from DMV, our State Assessors Association has a relationship with the National Automotive Dealers Association. So we actually, and we're required by state statute to price vehicles based on the NADA clean retail value. So many of our passenger cars come from, when we receive the list from DMV, are priced. There's a software program that they run with an association with the NADA. But we also receive listings of trailers, campers, truck campers, construction vehicles, what we also call incomplete vehicles, where we'll have a value for a cab and chassis, let's say, on a delivery truck, but we won't have the value for the box, or if it's a dump truck. So those types of vehicles we actually have to price out manually. And so that requires some time and effort. Some of the other things that we do, obviously we track land titles and deeds that are filed in the town clerk's office. So we update ownership information on a regular basis. So we process probably about 1,300 transactions a year that involve just ownership changes. And then we also, of that 1,300, there's usually about 600 that involve money. So there are sales involved in those transactions. And we're required to report any sale that occurs that's over $2,000 to the State Office of Policy and Management. So we have staff that, we used to do this by paper. OPM wants us to do it through a computer program, so we actually sign into their system and enter sales information so that they can compile our level of assessment each year. We also write a tremendous amount of certificate of corrections each year, mostly with respect to motor vehicles. Motor vehicles are bought and sold, so we will adjust assessments based on at what point in the assessment year someone has disposed of a vehicle. So if they owned the vehicle on October 1st and disposed of it on March 1st, we would adjust that assessment basically in half. And so we write approximately 2,700 certificate of corrections each year. And again, most of them are related to motor vehicle. We also process tax credit. We have 2 tax credit programs that we administer. Both are elderly tax credits. One is a state mandated program that we have to administer. Currently, we have 352 property owners that are receiving a tax credit based on this state program. And then we have a local freeze tax credit program that was enacted through a local ordinance. And we have 519 property owners that are receiving benefits from that program that currently totals about $545,000 annually. We also update our tax maps on a regular basis based on parcel subdivisions, landline adjustments, and so on. And we work with a vendor called AppGeo. They update our maps, and you see their product on our town website through the GIS maps. And then finally, we also work closely with our Board of Assessment Appeals. We provide them with support for appeals that they're hearing, and give them some guidance if they want it. We also will do follow-up inspections if they've got an appeal that involves someone to go out and look at it. So we have salaries at $191,240, which is fairly close to our historical salary line item with respect to last year. Overtime, we've consistently spent about $500 a year on overtime if you look back at the past. So we're requesting that same amount this year. Business personal property tax audits, we're requesting $10,000. This is a cost-effective program. This is one that actually generates additional tax revenue to the town. We select 20 businesses at random each year, so we're paying $500 per audit. They're completed in accordance with Connecticut general statutes. We follow the rules and the procedures. The audits generate additional tax revenue. So I just received about a month ago the results of the audits. We're allowed to go back 3 years. So we looked at the previous grand list and then 2 before that, so 2017, 2016, and 2015. And the results of that audit are going to generate approximately $35,000 in additional tax revenue, additional taxes. So we're spending $10,000 and receiving $35,000 in additional tax revenue. And the audits serve another function other than just generating revenue. Business owners start to talk to each other about the audits, number one. Accountants, the same thing. And then they discover, what our rules are in terms of how personal property should be declared. And it's not a clear-cut situation. So business owners, accountants, they're learning our methods and what's required by state statute with respect to the declaration of personal property. Training and development, we're requesting $3,000. This is similar to what we had last year. It covers such thing as membership dues in professional organizations. It allows us to go to Connecticut Assessing Officer Association approved workshops and seminars for certification and continuing education. And these classes are required as a CCMA level 2 and Mary as a CCMA level 1. We're required to have continuing education. We're required to go to 50 hours over a 5-year period to maintain our certification. And Jill Lucas is currently working towards her Administrative Assessment Technician designation, the AAT. And she's taken one class, she's in one now, and then there's a third one and a comprehensive exam. So the money for that comes from this account. And then she's also got the initiative and determination, and she's going to work forward to attain her CCMA level 1. So this money is very important to our department in terms of training and keeping abreast of situations in the assessment field. It's a great resource to network with other assessors that may be experiencing similar problems that I may have or we may have. The next line item, materials and supplies. We spend about $8,000 a year on printing. We're still a very paper-oriented office. We have to, for example, we have to print and bind our grand list on paper every year. It's a state requirement. So we spend money, probably about $3,000 printing our grand list and having it bound. And that also includes generating our assessment notice increases each year. We have access to DMV motor vehicle records. That helps us assist taxpayers who come in, have disposed of a vehicle. We can sometimes look up information about that vehicle online and assist them in receiving a proper assessment credit. This money also pays for the NADA motor vehicle pricing subscription, which runs about $800 a year, but it's obviously a worthwhile investment that we need to make. And then finally, we also spend a lot of money on paper, toner, and that sort of thing as far as office supplies. Here on slide 5, on page 96, this refers to our tax rebates and refunds. We actually keep an account that tracks the amount of tax refunds that we issue each year. They're primarily related to motor vehicles. This is a situation where a property owner, motor vehicle owner, pays their bill and then realizes they should have had an adjustment done first. We also have a lot of leased vehicles in town. And leasing companies in July, they're more concerned about paying the bills on time and sending us a check. And they worry about credits later. So, for example, this summer in July, this is the October 1, 2018 grand list, July 1 bills. They have until December 31st, 2020 to actually come to us and request a credit. So they will pay the bill up front and then give us documentation later in terms of corrections that we make. So that's why, as town council members, and Board of Finance members, you're seeing these listings every month or every meeting of credits or refunds are going back to property taxpayers. And then we also have the Board of Assessment Appeals. They make their changes in September to motor vehicles, if there are any. And of course, that's after July 1st. And it's a requirement at the board in September that they've paid their bill. So if they reduce the assessment and reduce the tax liability, we'll issue refunds for that. On page 97, our assessor's legal budget. This is down from last year. It was $40,000 this year. It's down. And that's just a function of the litigation we have before us at the present time. Assessor's capital, we're requesting $10,000. So on page 261, we're requesting $10,000 for our upcoming revaluation. We've set aside money in previous years. We have a fairly small amount for this year. We're going to be paying. We've signed a contract with the vendor, Vision Assessment Technologies. They're going to be doing performing our reassessment, and this is what we call a full measure and list. This is the reassessment that's done every 10 years, where you have to visit each property. So there'll be letters going out. They're going to start in the southern end of town and work their way north, and they're going to send letters out to different parts of town before they start to do the field work, so that they can notify taxpayers that they're going to be coming to their property, attempting to do an interior inspection and also measure the house. So this project is going to continue over the next 2 years. We'll be paying for it in this fiscal year, and then we'll be paying for part of the work that's done in the next fiscal year. Finally, we are requesting $10,000 in the assessor's capital, again on page 261. This is for the services we receive from AppGeo, so in relation to our tax map updates, which are generated by parcel subdivisions, lot line revisions, parcel merges. And then they also, our tax maps serve as the base layer for the GIS. So they'll also record any easement areas that are filed on maps that we send to them. And we also work with them in trying to resolve any kind of boundary line disputes, which may come up among property owners. So that's pretty much my presentation, monies that we're requesting this year.
Tom?
Any questions?
Two questions.
Yeah.
Well, one's a question, one's a comment. Motor vehicles that are registered out of state, people who are residents here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to go to too many of the school parking lots in the morning to see it or around town.
Right.
A lot of folks decided to try to skirt it. What are we doing to mitigate that issue and collect that revenue?
Yeah, we rely on reports from other property owners, taxpayers, who are upset about seeing that sort of situation. So what we do there is we will assess those vehicles as, quote, personal property. So motor vehicles are personal property in a sense. We have the motor vehicle grand list, which is a result of DMV sending us a listing of registered cars in Connecticut. What we'll do is we'll take vehicles that we discover through taxpayer reports or through our own field work. We may see them when we're out doing property inspections. We'll put those on the personal property list and then tax them accordingly, using the same NADA guides or whatever we have available to value it, depending upon what it is. So it's a problem. It's become an epidemic. We were working with Senator McLaughlin from Danbury, who was very upset about the situation of unregistered cars, cars registered in other states. He got a law passed 2 years ago that said if an assessor discovers an out-of-state registered car, we could go to the DMV and then they would help us with their connections with other state DMVs identify that car. So and then we would price it accordingly. And the statute even said that we would share 10% of the money with the DMV. The DMV said we don't have the money, the people, the resources to do it. And they convinced the legislature the following year to repeal the law. So Senator McLaughlin unfortunately wasn't reelected, but he was working on trying to get another bill passed. And we'd had this meetings with him and discussions, and there used to be an enforcement unit at DMV going back 20 years ago, and they would actually go out and approach car owners for unregistered vehicles. So there was some leverage there, and of course that's not longer a resource for us. So again, there are companies, I could talk to the mayor about it. There are companies that will come in to town, and for a fee, they expect a certain amount, a significant amount of the revenue that we generate the first few years, and they will actually drive around town and try to discover unregistered vehicles. So it's a big problem, but that's.
The second thing I want to say is just a comment on the GIS.
Yes.
People that don't know or haven't used it, it's an incredible tool. And with this subscription, you're going to maintain the layers there, like the wetlands layers,
right,
all the other layers that are available to people who use it. It's a fantastic tool. People have not used it.
Right. Yeah, it is a fantastic tool. We try to advertise as much as we can. There are some real estate professionals that don't even know about it. So, we try to tell them when they want a copy of a map, you could, and I'm not trying to get rid of a dollar, but, you could just do that at home. So, yeah, it's a great resource. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. It looks like in 2010 that the reevaluation was 625.
Yes.
625,000. What do you anticipate for 2020?
Yeah, so we signed a contract for $379,000. There's also we're also doing a software conversion as part of that. So we're actually saving quite a, versus 2010. It's quite a bit less.
How much do we have in the kitty?
Let's see. I thought we had 350, I believe.
It's 350.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have most of the money there.
So then we're just asking for another 10.
Yeah.
For this year, and
Right.
another 10 next year.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Walter? What's the income cap for seniors to get a tax credit?
Okay. It's for a married couple, it's $43,900.
Okay,
For a single, $36,000. Yep. Those are the income limits that we use with the state program.
okay, good,
Okay,
good.
got it.
Me, Dr. Mull?
Thank you.
Brian, you said there were 352 resident property owners receiving state discount, was that the number?
Yes.
And the second number I missed, how many were
Yeah.
getting
519. And
that from us?
yes. And the reason why that's higher is our local ordinance. With the state program, they count all income. So that means all your Social Security, whether it's taxable or not. And that's what really kind of bumps some people off the program. You know, they think they might qualify. Tell them a married couple, it's 43.9. They just automatically think in their head, oh yeah, I'll qualify. But then when they come in and we show them, we have to count all their Social Security in addition to any other income, pensions, you know, IRA withdrawals, so on. So the reason why there's 519 on the local is we take 50%, the way the ordinance is written, with their Social Security, we only count half of it, so 50% of it. So their income, quote, under the town program is lower when we look at it that way.
So the 352, that 352 is in that 519 number?
No.
No?
No.
They're different?
Oh, no, right. The 519 is on the, right now the tax credit for the 519 is 545,000.
Okay.
Yeah. For the state program, it's 178,000.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one other question. How do you choose, sorry, I just lost it. When you do the personal property audits?
Yes.
How do you, that you say that's randomly done? How is that randomly done?
Okay. We look at a couple different things. We look at some accounts that are, quote, non-filers. So believe it or not, there are a certain number of businesses that won't file with us. And so if we've seen over the years that there's not been a filing, we'll initiate an audit. Mm-hmm. If we see over time that there are no new acquisitions of personal property, of equipment, machinery, furniture, fixtures, you know, that might raise a red flag. So we look at, we'll do a search under that parameter. We'll also look at like businesses. So restaurants, for example, we will look at restaurants knowing, you know, comparing restaurants of similar sizes and look at and array their assessments and maybe discover outliers that way. So those are kind of the general practice that we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome.
And thank everybody in the office for their hard work.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Next is Nancy, tax collector.
Hi, Nancy McGavick, tax collector. My budget is pretty straightforward. It's only an increase of $14.01 from last year. The first slide is for personnel and overtime. Don't know if there's any questions that anyone has as far as that goes. The next slide is for our access to the DMV, $300. We report the delinquent taxpayers to motor vehicle in August and February, and we started a $5 per fee, or $5 per name fee for delinquents for having to put them on and clear them. Training, doing $400 this year, and our biggest is materials and supplies is $27,500. Don't know if there's any questions as far as this slide
Anyone have
goes.
any questions? Okay, Nancy?
Okay, and then the next slide is just the total collection that we had last year from July of 17 through June of 2018, and the different categories as to the money that we deposit at the bank, credit cards in the office, and online payments and the lockbox. And the next slide is what we've collected from July of 18 through January of 19 so far. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Nancy? Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for you and Doreen's all your work over there. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Next is we have probate for fiscal year 19 and 20. If you see page, we'll start on page 14. No.
Page 14.
Yep. And as you'll see here, we'd spoken with, and Greg can help me with this as well, when we spoke to Judge Landgraf, basically it's been a pass-through years over years. He collects the money from the other towns and then pretty much puts it in an account here, and then he takes it out. So basically we had told Judge, since you've been doing all that, you know, we're gonna kind of break you off of that and you do your own budget, which he was very thankful that he did. As you can see here, there's a, on page, what is it, 12 or 14. You're gonna see here rental town property. So the previous administration, as they moved, was the thought of the move over to the old Park and Rec building was to charge rent to pay for the electric and the other incidentals. So an MOU was signed, and that's the $12,000 that the probate pays to the town of New Milford. We're gonna monitor that and see if it becomes a wash with the utilities, and we'll be bringing that back in a 6-month increment back to the council. So basically, that's what it is for probate. Any questions? Walter?
Why the great difference in materials and supplies?
If you go to
They're
page 100.
they're running their budget themselves. What we're doing this year differently, we're giving them New Milford, Town of New Milford's appropriation, and they're writing checks instead of flowing everything through our town.
Got
We're
it.
just cutting them a check and they're doing their own thing.
Yep.
Good. Thank you, Greg.
Next is the personnel budget. Greg? Page 102.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Greg Bolero, the Personnel Director for the town of New Milford. For those that don't know, the Personnel Department is responsible for 191 full-time employees with 28 part-time positions and 72 seasonal employees for a total employee count of 291 employees. We consist of myself as the Personnel Director and Diane Cunningham as a Personnel Assistant, and together we handle and process all human resource functions for every department in town with the exception of the Board of Ed. All right, so for our budget, our personnel salaries are here. There's a slight increase here, which is just due to the non-union wage increases. So our total is $134,835. Our expenses, which is really the bulk of our line items, The first line, the tuition reimbursement, this is another reduction of $5,000. So a couple of years ago, we consolidated tuition reimbursement from all the departments into the personnel department for greater scrutiny and organization. We started that budget at $35,000. The utilization really wasn't there, so we reduced it this year to $20,000. And to date, we've only expended a little bit under $7,500. So for next year, we have reached out to all the department heads, and based on the responses and what the expected expenditures to be, we're reducing that to a line item of $15,000. Our materials and supplies, this is for all of our personnel files, folders, paper, just everything for the personnel department. We're keeping that flat at $1,700. Our biggest expense increase is going to be our recruitment expenses. And recruitment expenses, traditionally over the past few years, we've budgeted between $2,500 and $3,000. But the advertising for newspaper ads, for online ads, and just recruitment in general has skyrocketed. We recently posted a position for the highway superintendent, and it was $842 for 1 week. So this is, an increase of $2,000. We revised this budget for this year to $6,000 because we had run out of funds. It's a $1,000 reduction from there, but I do think a $5,000 budget for recruitment is going to be suffice. Our drug and alcohol testing. This is our federally mandated drug and alcohol testing for all of our Class A and Class B commercial drivers. This includes the senior center, all of our highway, and as well as our park and rec department for any of our town vehicles. It's an increase of $200. It's a nominal increase, but you'll continually see an increase through CCM on that line item. EAP. EAP is a fantastic program for our employees. So just today, we had a customer service training through EAP. We had 60 employees here focused on customer service, and it's just a great resource for employees. We have manager trainings that come through this program. We have management referrals for problem employees that we have to send, for guidance. It's an increase of $125, but it's a really worthwhile program. And lastly, the training and development. Last year we had an increase due to a certification that I was able to obtain to really focus on labor relations, which has already saved us money, but we're reducing the training and development budget down to $1,500. It's a $2,500 reduction. So for our expenses, we're reducing that line by $5,175. And we have a total budget of $166,435, which is a reduction of our budget in the amount of $1,691.
Any questions for Greg? Walter?
Could you just read
Greg,
that
I didn't quite pick up on.
Yeah, what was your total number?
The total number, $166,435.
That's right.
Greg, I didn't quite pick up on staff training and development. Why was that down 2,500?
So I had a training program that I went to last year, which increased that budget, but this is the training budget just for the personnel department. So we have our memberships, we have our training. A lot of the training that we do will be through CCM and a lot of the free means. That's why it's not a significant dollar.
Okay, tuition reimbursement, everybody is certified then, is that?
So for our tuition reimbursement, based on our survey of all of our department heads on who we are expecting to be taking qualifying classes, that budget is down significantly from 2 years ago.
Good.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Doug?
Greg, just walk me through the personal recruitment expense. So the average person would say, with technology and stuff, why does it cost $5,000?
So, and it's for all of our positions. When we put ads in the paper, for the News Times and for the Spectrum, it's about $542 for the week. If we're reaching out to the Waterbury Republic or the Republican American, it can be $750. The Hartford Current is anywhere from $800. If we're doing a Sunday ad, it can be $1,000. So depending upon the position that we have and the reach that we're looking to go, that's where our expenses come in. I do utilize a lot of free means for our recruitment. I utilize Indeed. We use our town website. We do use Facebook. But if we were to utilize any of the paid sites, that's where the expenses come in.
So are we mandated to have to put it in the newspaper?
Yes. We're not mandated to have to put it into the newspaper, but it's been a six. It is the bulk of where our cost comes from.
And so let me ask you this: the average person, how many people do you think actually look at a newspaper and call you as opposed to.
We still get a good response. I don't know what the exact result is. We do get a very good response out of our newspaper ads, especially for like the highway superintendent search that we have. I've gotten 4 applications from our newspaper ad. Indeed, the type of person that we're actually looking for generally is not online, and that's where the difference is.
So they wouldn't look at it like a headhunter site or something, they would actually look in the newspaper, somebody with that kind of qualification would actually look in the newspaper for this?
They're not going to Indeed. We could do Monster, or we could do some of the other paid ones, but again, if we're going paid, it's gonna be a lot more than 5,000.
This day and age, and a highly qualified person, I don't see that person going to a newspaper.
Well, keep in mind though, a lot of the times when we're doing the newspaper, we're getting the online job ads. So for the Spectrum, they're posting in Monster for us, so that we don't have to have a Monster subscription. They're gonna post, and it's picked up on Indeed from a paid perspective. We also post to Indeed on the free site that capture additional, applicants.
So maybe in the future, maybe next year, you can break that down and see how many people actually, if it's actually worth it.
Absolutely.
And how much will you actually pay toward a newspaper?
Absolutely.
Chris?
That's actually the general direction I was going in, so my questions are answered.
JD, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say, why don't you please track from, let's say, so next year, we'll know how many people answered by what means?
Absolutely.
When we get a call, thanks.
Any other, Dr. Muller?
Greg, just towns similar in our size, personnel director that has to deal with this many employees,
Mm-hmm.
what's the average salary?
I actually brought that with me. So for our size, which would include New London, Mansfield, Farmington, Richfield, Windsor, South Windsor, Cheshire, Newtown. For New Milford, we're the second to the lowest, to be honest. Cheshire, which they also incorporate both the Board of Ed as well as the town, their personnel director makes about 135. But apples to apples, you'll see the personnel directors range anywhere from 94 to about 117.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is the Fire Marshal Emergency Management. Brian.
All right, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Brian Oman. I'm your fire marshal, emergency manager for the town. Try to keep this short and sweet and answer all your questions. You guys got a long week. So our mission statement, which is on our website, is provide a professional life safety protection and reduce the harm associated with fires, explosions, mechanical failures, and the citizens of our town through risk assessment and prevention programs, education, and investigations regulated by the state. Our core responsibilities, our office is myself and Kevin Reynolds, who's the deputy fire marshal full-time, and we share a secretary, Donna Tallarico, with the building department. The lion's share of our responsibilities are investigations for fires and explosions, plan reviews of any commercial building that comes through our office with the building department, the inspections that follow up with those plan reviews, annual occupancy inspections of every structure in town other than 1 and 2 family dwellings. Pub Ed is a big part of our prevention program. Open burning at your house and the farms in town. We oversee the regulations and hazardous materials and explosives. We're also one of the front runners in town of the different departments with dealing with hoarding issues. And then on the emergency management side of the house, I'm the emergency management director, which kind of runs the emergency operations center when that opens during storms or cold weather, things like that. I sit on the LEPC in town, the Local Emergency Planning Commission, REPT, which is the Region 5 government that we are support and are involved with, and then working with our town departments and schools for their emergency planning and exercises, along with conducting training exercises around town and for the town. A little bit of review of our last year. We had an increase of about 400 inspections, 1,563. Plan reviews were about the same, 135. We're down a little bit in new construction inspections, 147 in 911 callouts, which is a little less. We had a fairly quiet year last year for emergencies, 34 burn permits, and 48, up to 48 from 35 emergency management activities. Revenue, we're doing very well so far. Actually, I checked today, and our current year to date, we're up to 41,000, and we try to project 40,000 as an annual revenue, so we're already above that for the budget year. Last year, we passed that also. We're up to 43,008, up 10,000 from the year before, and a lot of that was bringing Kevin Reynolds up to speed, as he's been here in town about 2.5 years now. So now he's.
Brian, just for the edification of our council members and our Board of Finance members, if you're looking at your adopted 40,000 in revenue, and now we're looking at 53,000 plus,
Yes.
that's about a 30% lift.
Yep. So through our diligence of trying to be as proactive as possible for annual inspections, it came across our attention that there's 553 more places we have to go every year through apartments, which includes Willow Springs, Prospect Commons, Valley View condos, River Glen condos. So right there is another revenue stream of just over 13,000 we'll have every year going forward. I do have to say, after the town ordinance amendment to our inspection fees and our billing things, it's helped out tremendously, being able to send one bill to a association rather than 300 individuals and tracking them down. So that's been a huge help, getting the money out of the association coffers instead of individuals. So it's just helped out a lot. I believe they will going forward. This is the first calendar year we've been hitting them.
This way it's incorporated,
Yeah.
and you get the one
Yep.
check.
Yeah, makes it a lot smoother.
Okay.
So our capital request, we'll talk about that first, is for the emergency management aspect. So through our drills and our training exercises with the town, it tests our vulnerabilities. And our biggest vulnerability in this town was in result of when the town updated our gas pumps and we lost control of having our own gasoline tank. Right now, currently, all gasoline-powered vehicles go to the 2 Mitchell gas stations in town, which do not have emergency power. So right now, we have no gas supply if there's a power outage in town.
So not to step on Brian's toes, and I apologize if I did, but when we were doing our emergency management training, where we bring in the police, we bring in fire, ambulance, hospital, and we're all doing what-if scenarios. And one of the what-if scenarios is if we have a major calamity here where it ends up knocking out our grid, our power, where do we go? And when we were going through those scenarios, the major component that really hit us was, as of right now, because of the changeover down at DPW, it's only diesel fuel, we don't have gas. So what happens is, when you don't have gas, your fire trucks don't work, your police cars don't work, your ambulances that aren't on diesel don't work. So it's imperative that we get this gas tank so that we can have a supply in case of a calamity. We're prepared.
Is that part of the emergency medical development then? Is that the stipend?
No, so this is separate. This is capital request separate from that. I've been working with the mayor and the finance department and talking with some of our local vendors we use for that supply these gas tanks, trying to arrange getting a used one at a cost savings and the first idea was to have the gas tank placed up out of the flood zone, up in Sarah Noble School in the tennis courts where their facilities maintenance have all their trucks and plows behind the old tennis court. But trying to make it a little better, working with the state fire marshal's office and working with the mayor, I believe we can, through a modification, actually shoehorn it right next to the diesel tank at Patriots Way. So we'll use the emergency generator there and have it hardwired in. So this price includes a new tank, which is a 2,000 gallon tank, and we use about 4,000 to 6,000 gallons a month in gasoline. So my thought was if we could have a 10-day supply and still be able to get a gasoline truck into our emergency tank, you know, we'll be ahead of where we are now. And that price includes everything: the electrical, the crash protection, the concrete, the whole kit and caboodle.
Kate?
Brian, no gas station in our town has a generator?
I believe the newer gas stations have, like Cumberland Farms, I believe is our newest one. They do not. They have, during the May storm, they have a quick connect on the side of their building for a trailer to get towed in.
Right.
But that took 3 days.
So even Citgo, or whatever they are now?
Nope, they used to have one.
Yeah, I thought.
I think they're kind of waiting for when they do their next phase of renovations. When they build their new building, they'll probably bring it back.
Then we would be in trouble. Thanks for noticing that.
Yeah.
We
And
don't
then-
own a generator.
I'm sorry?
We don't own a trailer generator.
We do not. We have 2 small portable ones in the red barn, actually right in the parking lot, which I was going to use to power it if it was at Sarah Noble. But if it's already piped, it's already wired, if we can put it next to the diesel tank. So the state fire marshal believed it was a good possibility.
Ryan, the fire marshal fees, is that a projection or just?
We've always used that number as like a goal, but going forward, like we can, like Pete said, we can increase it because that standing inspection on annuals for apartments is going to be there, so we can raise it that 13,000 for our new benchmark for inspections.
All right.
Dr. Mull?
Brian, I'm sorry, I missed what you said about you were looking at a site up by the tennis courts at Sarah Noble?
Yeah, that was originally my thought, is, you know, try to find a piece of property up higher, not thinking that it could fit down at Patriots Way. So I talked to the mayor and the Board of Ed, and we were thinking, you know, initially the 202 corridor at Sullivan Farms, and then just basically for cost savings, putting it at Sarah Noble because they already had a fenced-in lot with access controlled.
Isn't that field by the tennis courts and that old practice field next to it, isn't that an old septic field? That's why the tennis courts are cracking.
I don't know what was there before.
I guess it's not going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can put it there. So, well, I don't think it should even be considered, okay?
Okay.
I don't, there's a reason those tennis courts always failed. You put it on top of sand, it's not gonna work. Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian? Yes, ma'am.
Those burn permits, am I correct in assuming that a new permit is needed every time somebody burns on their property? They wouldn't get one permit for all summer
Correct.
to burn, so it's
The burn permits are good for 20 days at a clip.
Okay.
The most of them do go to the farms in town, where we'll go and we'll re-inspect and we'll just renew that same permit. We don't charge for agricultural properties.
I'm talking about like in a residential.
Yep.
Unless, or we have an unfortunate mishap like we did with the tornado or microburst in the southern part of New Milford, where the fire marshal and the state fire marshal allowed for a burn for several months. Correct.
Yeah, we opened, we waived the fees until Labor Day.
And then that sign has to be posted.
It doesn't have to be posted, they're just whoever's burning has to have the permit on hand, so.
Walter?
Why the decrease in professional development?
Why do we have a decrease?
Yeah.
So the professional development, the mayor made that cut, but one of the subscriptions we use for our online codes is about $1,300 a year for NFPA. and our codes got renewed last October, so we're good saving that money until the next code cycle comes around, which is probably in 2 more years. Okay. Yep.
Thinking of these tanks down on by Young's Field, why don't they put them up higher so you can use gravity feed if the electricity goes out?
I don't know. Probably cost savings for stilts and just a safety factor. I don't know. It's a good question.
We can look at that, Mr. Tripp.
Yeah.
Can't get much
We'll look at
safer
that.
than no power.
Well, I initially did look at hand cranks, but those are, I think, 50 cranks for 20 gallons, and I think most of the employees would wear off their arms before filling the tank.
Got a good workout.
Looking forward to the fire marshal's general budget and the EMD. They're 2 separate budgets going forward, trying to have a more clear defined departments. So the fire marshal's office has an increase of $2,302. We're doing some shifting of monies from the overtime account to the personnel account in the theory of right now I'm an hourly employee, so converting basically what I've made historically the last few years and the fire marshal before me, taking that chunk of money from overtime and moving into my base salary. And then also there's an increase in there for the deputy Kevin Reynolds. I'm asking for a step increase from him from a step 10 to a step 11, which is $3,700 due to his hard work and education and trying to balance out where he fits in the ladder of steps in the union. So we shuffled $6,500 from overtime over to salaries, $1,200 less in professional development, and then $200 less in our special department supplies, which is our turnout gear, our fire investigation equipment, things like that. For the emergency management side of the budget, which is his own budget, is $13,500. That's $12,500 in stipends for 2 positions, and then $1,000 for equipment, trainings, miscellaneous supplies. This budget is his first year coming forward, being developed. We do have the chance, which is a very good chance, to get this reimbursed through the state. There is a emergency management performance grant that the state allows to Homeland Security, which there are training components to it, which Kevin and I have both met all of them already. Exercises, which we participated with the mayor, and working forward, being proactive with our town emergency plans.
Any other questions? Chris?
The emergency management stipends, was this somewhere else in the budget before this year, or this is all brand new?
That's a long conversation we had before. So before, there was never anything identified from the finance department or the budget for emergency management, anything. It was part of my job offer, but it never kind of made it to finance from Mayor Gromback. So now we're developing it and defining it, which makes it easier to get reimbursed from the state.
Katie?
No,
Oh,
I
thank you.
had none.
Doug?
Brian, is Tammy helping you with the grant? Is she helping out a little bit? Does
Yeah,
her
yeah,
expertise help?
yeah. So we gave her the numbers. It was refine them. I believe the EMPG grant is usually due in the fall, or and that's when we'll hear back, because that works off the federal budget, which I think is October 1st is their new budget year. So, but yeah, Tammy is helping us out.
When will they notify you for that?
I believe they get announced in the fall,
Well, okay.
and it's a reimbursement, so we have to show the expenses first, and then we get refunded.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you and Kevin for your hard work.
Very thorough.
Next, the police department. Chief?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
He was the fire marshal. I didn't recognize him at first because he had a deer. It was him.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're very proud to be here representing the men and women of the New Milford Police Department. And I want to thank you all for your support. We can't get it done. We can't keep this town as safe as we do without your support, without the support of the citizens. So we really appreciate all the help we get. We're all in this together, and we need to continue to work together. As I said, I'm very proud of the work the men and women of the New Milford Police Department are doing, and they're doing good work. They're doing hard work. And this year we had a very positive beginning to our year. We had a new contract signed, and you'll see a lot of our budget increases are as a result of that new contract. Our contract did expire earlier in the year, so we did go over. And our new budget reflects 2 pay increases. It increases 1.75% for this year, the current fiscal year. And upcoming in the next fiscal year, we have a 2% increase. So you'll see a 3.75% increase in the salaries encompassed in our budget. As I said, the year began with a new contract, and in that new contract, there was another new addition that made me very happy. We're providing bulletproof vests for all of our police officers, and you might say, well, didn't we do that in the past? And the answer is no. So I'm very happy to say this year we're providing all of our officers with bulletproof vests. We're very concerned for their safety and well-being, and I'm very happy to see that the town is providing for that. You'll see that's an approximate $20,000 increase in this year's budget. Money well spent, approximately $1,000 for each vest we purchase. So it will be a rolling plan. We're not going to buy new ones for everyone this year, but those officers who have old vests, expired vests, we're going to be replacing all of those this year. So another very positive enhancement in our budget proposal. I also wanted to mention that there's 5 new officers who just came off training. Coming off training and going into our regular patrol force increases our budget. The trainees make approximately $55,000 a year. A first step patrol officer makes approximately $60,000 a year. So there's that $5,000 times 5, you'll see an increase of $25,000 in our salaries because of issues such as that. Nevertheless, we're very proud to have them out there, very excited to have them out there, and I'm sure you'll see some new faces on patrol soon. Most of them are on the midnight shift, and that's kind of normal for newer officers. You'll see in our PowerPoint, I wanted to talk to you about our activity. Our activity is directly linked, obviously, to the funds we're able to expend, and we appreciate your support again. You'll see we have 29,374 case numbers that we handled in this last year. Of that, 752 were arrests. You can see the officers are out there and being very proactive in motor vehicle stops, 1,550, yet you can see they're also utilizing discretion and being fair to the public and using an education aspect. You'll see that 712 of those motor vehicle stops are infractions. Motor vehicle accidents, 1,071 last year, alarms, 1,545. And our officers also respond to medical calls. They're all emergency medic trained, and we responded to 1,759 of those last year. A lot of hard work they're doing. There's also a lot of good work they're doing. Community policing is a big focus of mine. It's a big focus of our police department, and there's police officers who are ready and willing to become involved in many different community policing programs. You'll see at the top, I put a quote that officers are to be a part of the community, not apart from the community. We want to work with the community, and these are some of the ideas we have to continue that trend. A lot of these are low cost but high impact items. And that's the key with community policing. It doesn't cost a lot, but boy, do you get a lot in return. You can see some examples of things that we propose, things that we're doing now, and things that you'll see rolled out in the near future. We're going to increase foot patrols, bike patrols. We're going to utilize our boat patrols more so. We're going to use that in a fashion in the Main Street area, in the Bank Street area, and down in the parks. We're going to fund that creatively. I've applied for a grant. We're encouraged that we're going to get that $10,000 grant, and that'll give us funds to get our officers out on bike patrols, foot patrols, and boat patrols. We're also going to renovate the old substation. Many of you have probably seen down on Railroad Street. We want to clear it out. We want to clean it up. We want to open it up to the public. We want to get those doors open. Even myself, I'm going to stop down there and sit at the desk and invite citizens to come in and express their concerns with me. We want to be in touch with the community, and that seems to be the epicenter of New Milford. I announced at a Rotary meeting last week that we're going to begin a Citizen Police Academy. The Citizen Police Academy is going to start in the fall, and it's going to be a program that allows citizens to see what we as officers do on a daily basis and see that police officers are people too, real citizens, family, men and women, people who really care about people. It'll be a fun program. It'll be an interesting program. It'll be an informative program. Our Good Citizen program, you've probably seen that in the news recently, a very positive program where we recognize and catch children doing something positive. Rather than always dealing with them in a negative sense, we want to catch people doing a good thing. And it's been very successful so far. Officers are handing out these passes. An example would be an officer pulled over a motor vehicle the other night, and the mom was very upset she was getting pulled over, but the kid was even more upset, crying and upset that the police were dealing with her mom. And the officer was able to pull out this movie pass, talk to the child, in a sense gave the kid a ticket, but a different kind of ticket. The sister was in the back seat, and of course you can't give one child without giving the other child. Nevertheless, an excellent program. The community is really buying into this program. I want to appoint a military liaison. Our military men and women in New Milford are very important people. We want to work with them. We're going to appoint a military liaison so the military people have somewhere to go and a contact at the police department. You know, the way the world is today with the war zones and the problems overseas, our military veterans are coming back with issues that we in the police department need to deal with, and we're going to have a person available for them to talk to. Our community care team is another excellent program. Coffee with a Cop Mayor, I'm sorry I stole that from you, but maybe we'll have coffee with the council too, who knows. Nevertheless, a low-cost, high-impact program for sure. Our Special Olympians are very important people to us. We're going to continue to work with them. We have a special spot in our lobby now where we have plaques, a Special Olympics torch. I went to a Special Olympics meeting last week with one of our officers, Officer Novak, and we're planning to move forward with that program in a bigger way. Autistic and Alzheimer's within our community. We want to be in touch with all of our community, and we're going to work with these groups of people and their family to implement a Wanderers program. We want to know who in our community has these issues, and we want to be there to help them. School resource officers, obviously these come out of our budget, a very big part of our budget. These 3 officers are funded by the police department budget, but nevertheless, money well spent. Money well spent insofar as school security, money well spent as far as having our officers in touch with children and being role models for our children. We're in the process of increasing and improving our social media footprint. You'll see a fresh website. You know, when I came in a few months ago and I looked at our website, the first thing I saw was a picture that was 10 years old. It was an old format. We're going to improve it. It's going to be a fresh format. We're excited about it. It's going to be a recruitment tool we're going to use. Speaking about recruitment tools, we're going to produce a video. You'll see a video that comes out later this spring, hopefully by June, and it's going to highlight all the good things our men and women of the New Milford Police Department do. It's going to highlight our scuba team, our bike patrols, our canines. It's going to highlight our trainers, and it's going to highlight our boat patrols. It's going to highlight these things in hopes of attracting good candidates to the New Milford Police Department. Internships are something that we continue, and it's a good program. Citizen ride-alongs are something we want to do also. We want the citizens to know that they can come out with us, ride with us, see what we do, and that we want to work together with them. So all of these things that I talk about, I want you to know the work we do, the amount of work we do, the good ideas and the good work we do, and these are the people that do it. It's all teamwork. This isn't about any one of us, it's about all of us. All of us are smarter than any one of us. Nevertheless, this is the breakdown of our department. Each one of them is very important. Top, bottom, middle, everybody's equal and everybody's as equally as important. Our officers do an excellent job. Our dispatchers, who are behind the scenes and often don't get acknowledged, do a very, very good job. And I'm very proud of all of them. This brings me to our biggest issue of the evening. And this is my biggest highlight and my biggest request in the budget. I'm requesting an officer, I'm requesting one officer added to our police force. And that one small move can make a very big impact. And I want to show you that big impact. Here's our current organizational chart. And as you can see, there's some heavy responsibilities on one side. Can you see on the administrative lieutenant side the amount of tasks that are involved? And believe me, those are only the ones that I could fit on the slide. There are so many more and so many more important ones that I would have liked to put up there, but you get the idea. Can you see that this is a lopsided scenario? If this were a scale and that center line were a fulcrum, can you see that the scale would be tipping heavily towards the administrative side? And as I came in and as the new chief, I kind of looked at the organizational landscape. This was one thing that jumped out at me, and this is one thing that I think we need to correct. The problem with that last slide is that the immense responsibility on one lieutenant causes problems. It causes problems in supervision. It causes problems in focus. What are we focusing on? This is the way I would like to focus. If you were to support the one new officer that I'm asking for, this is what I could do. Instead of having 2 lieutenants, I could have 3 lieutenants. I could split those duties, and now you could see with this example, you see a more balanced organizational chart. You see a scale that's balanced, not tilted heavily one way or the other. You see a scenario where these lieutenants can properly supervise, having a manageable scope. Each one of these tasks is very important. Moving the detective division into its separate area, it'll allow that detective lieutenant to focus primarily on detective work. And we have a lot of serious cases in New Milford. You've probably seen it in the news lately. You've probably seen cases of arson. You know there are drug problems in certain areas, and you hear about heroin overdoses on a continual basis. You know that we investigate burglaries and the robberies come and the fraud is ever existent. This will give our detective lieutenant an opportunity to focus heavily in these areas. A detective division that could focus on drugs is very, very important. When a dealer comes into this town and sells drugs to somebody and they die from an overdose, we want to put that person in jail. We want to focus our attention on them. And under this organizational chart, we can do that. You'll see our detectives are doing an excellent job. You can also see they'll do a better job under this scenario. Nevertheless, detective work, very important, requires its own focus. Having a detective bureau under the administrative bureau just does not make sense and just does not work as well as it should. I don't want to take away from the detectives. They do a good job. I think under this scenario, it could be a more effective and efficient situation. Just to get back to the administrative services, because I don't want you to think that that's not an important area either. Detectives can work better under this scenario. The administrative services bureau can work better under this scenario also. Under that administrative headline, you have some very, very important issues. We have communications. We have dispatchers. We have the records division and records clerks. These areas are both very important, and there's a high potential for liability if they're not managed properly. They do an excellent job under the current situation. They can do a better job under this situation. You'll see that also under the administrative section is the accreditation section, and that's something new that we're focusing on. And I'm very happy to report to you today that we had the state of Connecticut come in today. The Post Police Officer Training Council came in and reviewed 16 critical areas. And I want to thank Sergeant Wheeler for his hard work on the policies that he's developed over the last number of months. Sergeant Wheeler's my administrative sergeant, and he's been working on putting these policies together, these 16 critical policies, so that we could be approved by the state of Connecticut. And we had that done today. Our review went perfect. We got excellent compliments, and I want to thank you very much for that. It was an excellent move forward for the New Milford Police Department. Getting our policies in order and contemporary is important. That administrative function needs to focus on our policies to reduce liability and improve our officer practical response. As you see, other important topics under administrative is training. Training is vital, training on all levels, training at the base level and training at the administrative level, supervision, training, and training in all of our divisions. Training, very important. You can see grants under here. I want our administrative division to focus on grants. We need to improve our relationship with the state and with the federal government insofar as how we apply for grants, and we're moving forward on that. Sergeant Wheeler, Lieutenant Ash are working on that, and we're going to get started on that and move forward with that as early as tomorrow. So nevertheless, the point I want to make, very important tasks in each one of these divisions. We need excellent supervision, and we need improved and increased focus. And I hope you can see the need, and I hope you can support that one extra person. That one extra person makes a big difference, and this is one difference, and I want to explain another difference. I want to promote from within. I want to give our officers opportunity. I want to give them professional development. I want to give them the sense of commitment, hard work, having options. If I were to promote a lieutenant, a sergeant to a lieutenant, I'd be able to promote a detective to an officer, for example. Then I'd be able to promote an officer to a detective. Then I'd be able to hire a new officer. Can you see how one move can cause such positive movement within the department? So 2 points. One, if we get that added officer, we'll have better focus, better supervision. We'll be able to approach problems such as the drug problems, such as the traffic problems, such as the policy issues in a more efficient manner. You'll see it tilts that scale from an awkward position to a more balanced position. So I appreciate your support in that area. If you have any questions on that, I'd certainly be willing to address those now.
Any questions, Walter?
Chief, I'm not familiar with the student guardian program. Are those bus monitors, guards?
Yes, sir, they are, and that program has been discontinued. So
Okay.
we no longer are involved in that program.
All right. Couple other questions then. A while ago, we talked about bulletproof vests.
Yes.
Are we moving in that direction?
Yes, we're moving in that direction 100%. We have officers now who are working on determining the level of bulletproof vests we want. So right now, we're discussing the vests we want. We're going to be very shortly asking for pricing information from different vendors in the area, and then the officers will be fitted. So.
And well, they should be.
Yes.
Well, they should be.
Yes, it is a contractual issue. I mean, out of respect for all of you, I want to come forth and certainly get the approval to move forward with that. Nevertheless, very, very, very important that we do that.
What about police weapons? You got a big reduction in police weapons.
Yes, we did have a change in police weapons, plus we had a number of officers hired last year, and for each officer, you need to purchase new weapons. This year, I anticipate, and I hope I can get that one new officer, and in that case, I'd have to buy one new weapon, plus we may have to buy a few others if something fails or something like that.
You also had a big reduction in police supplies.
Yes, let me see, what line were you talking about, sir?
I'm on page 245. Police supplies, you're down 22,187.
Second line down.
What page again?
245, Chief.
245, got it. Second down. Oh, the 22,000 in that line was for this budget year, and that is to buy an electronic fingerprint machine. So no longer do we do fingerprints with the old ink. We use a computer, and we need to upgrade that computer, and that will cost us $22,000. We haven't expended that money yet,
Okay.
but we plan on expending that.
I don't know, I kind of like the old-fashioned method of getting the ink all
Well,
over my fingers.
if you want, next time we'll do it that way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Why, you been there a lot?
I've been there a lot. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Chief, a few questions, more out of curiosity. Are bulletproof vests, is it mandated that the patrolmen need to wear them?
It is not in a sense, but it is under the contract now. But in general, there is an accreditation standard that requires it. So best practices, yes. Accreditation standards, yes. And we are moving towards accreditation. Our department is going to start working towards accreditation this year. So it will be required. But of course, a best practice and of course, common sense wise, yes.
All right. Just a little information on the school resource officers.
Yes.
Are they, I recall at one point they were like covering 2 schools. Is that what's happening now?
Yes, they do. We have 3 school resource officers and we cover 5 schools. So we have 1 in the high school,
Okay.
dedicated solely to the high school. We have 1 at the middle school and 1 at the elementary school up on the hill. So they're covering 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Officer Young is also covering 2. So we have 2 officers covering 2 and 1 covering the high school.
Okay. On your chart here for the proposed organizational chart,
Yes.
just give me you don't have to be exact number, but how many people under each lieutenant do you figure?
In the new proposal?
Yeah, yes, Chief.
As far as a detective lieutenant, you'd have 1 detective sergeant and 5 detectives. So you'd have a span of control of 6 under that detective lieutenant. Under Lieutenant Ash, he would have 30 patrol officers, and he'd have 6 patrol sergeants. So under his span of control, there'd be 36. With the administrative lieutenant, you have an administrative sergeant, administrative officer. You have 2 records clerks. You have 9 dispatchers. And that would be their span of control. So while there's an imbalance with manpower, obviously there is somewhat of a balance with tasks involved.
I like the proposal, Chief. I think when you have a new leadership come in, you have to look at it as a different way of, not necessarily a different way, but a way that you think it's going to be more efficient, more beneficial.
Thank you. I appreciate
So this
that.
looks good. I would be supporting this.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know what else is needed to receive the accreditation.
The accreditation is a program that involves different tiers. You have 3 tiers. You will work on tier 1 first. Once you get your tier 1 accreditation, you can move through the other tiers. But to get your first stage accreditation, you have to comply with 128 standards. These are standards, you can call them best practices. Nevertheless, the 128 standards are set by the state, and you have to work to develop policies, procedures, and it's a process that could be done in 18 months. On average, 18 months to 2 years is a good average for getting to that point. Nevertheless, accreditation is more than just policies. It's about a philosophy. It's about taking the department to a different level. It's about high morale. It's about professionalism. It's about the citizens having confidence in their police department, trusting their police department. It's about transparency. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it insofar as how we do our job, the policies that we implement. Also, our facilities have to be up to par. So there are cell block related issues. For example, you have to have cameras in certain areas. You have to have areas where you can secure your juveniles separate from adults. Of course, you have to be able to separate your males from females, not only by sight, but also by sound. So there are these types of considerations. Equipment, facilities, policies, personnel, and honestly, things like this. A proper organizational chart with proper supervision and standards of control.
So do you figure a 2-year plan to make that happen?
Yeah, that's my plan. We want to start it this year. We've got so much going on now with this new, approval by the state and our 16 policies in place. That's a good start. Well, that's a good base. I can say we've started it already. But we're going to officially apply. We're going to officially announce it this year.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Chief, by the way, I really appreciate the community involvement in that, the increase in that.
Thank you. It is what it is about. Yes.
In terms of, on page 129, the increase in sergeants and patrolmen, that's due to the contract?
Yes, you'll see that is one of our largest increases. You'll see an increase in the sergeants, officers, and detectives, and that is that contractual raise. It is also considering that these 5 new officers moved to a different step. Remember, that's $25,000 in itself. Other officers also moved to other steps, so those step increases also impact that line.
That includes the new officer that you want to add? Is that
Yes, that also includes that $55,000.
Which line is that one in?
Oh,
you know?
Well, that is in that patrolman, the patrolman line.
The patrolman, okay, that's part of that.
And it's specifically noted on page 132. You'll see a vacancy at the bottom.
Yep.
And then, of course.
Okay. And with this new structure, can you identify any performance metrics that you're looking to improve as an outcome of this?
Yes.
That we could go back in a year or two and say,
Yep.
that was a good move, or maybe it didn't move the needle?
I do like the idea of matrix on a simple scale. I know that we will improve, for example, in the area of drugs and drug investigations. We'll be able to show an increase in drug-related arrests. We'll be able to show an increase in our investigations. You'll see it. You'll see that increase in the news when it happens. I can tell you that we're on the cusp of working on things like that. As far as a matrix and so far as the administrative side, you'll see an improvement in the accreditation, our policy development. No doubt about it, you're going to see an improvement in training. I'd be able to show that we're doing more training, we're doing more supervisory training. The Constitution's a big deal in today's world. We need to give more constitutional policing type training. So things like that, I would be able to show an improvement and an increase, yes.
Great. Thank you.
I know one thing as well, Chris, is a more holistic approach when we're talking about the opioid crisis that's affecting everyone.
Yes.
Is looking at it kind of in a 3-prong approach. So you have the police and enforcement, and in this particular metrics and the way organizationally it is, we can give a more conscientious effort to really affect that. Also, I know Katie's on that with the HV CASA and looking at addiction in a different way, in a helpful way, and also partnering with a hospital for treatment. So looking at those particular things and doing them all in a holistic way, I think is going to be very helpful to our constituency.
Exactly.
Great.
Katie?
Wonderful explanation of everything, and I just want to say, so we don't forget, your parking officer, she does a very good job.
Yes.
I can attest.
And I'm sure others can also. Yes.
For the revenues. No, she does a great job. She's constantly around.
Yes, I mean, I have to admit my tires chalked every once in a while too.
Tom?
Yeah.
Chief, this was the best presentation I've seen of the police department in the 10 years I've been sitting here. It's been the most clear, concise, easy to understand, and it's the greatest outreach I've ever seen to this community from the police department as a whole.
Our men and women are poised to move forward. We're a department that's on the move, and we're excited about this upcoming.
And I was very pleased, and was a big proponent of that schedule change that gives family men that work in the department the ability to have weekends on the rotating schedule.
Yes.
Every 5 or 6 weeks, you have a weekend with your family, which I know was very difficult on officers and family patrolmen. It was very difficult to recruit folks to the town.
Yes,
So, incredibly
exactly.
pleased.
Big
Thank you.
improvement. Appreciate your support on that.
Thank you. And I'm going to support that.
Thank you very much. Big
it.
impact.
Just a quick way. Well, first, welcome to New Milford. But to springboard off Katie, the parking enforcement, the costs versus revenues on that, are we exceeding or?
You will see that our revenues and the costs are almost
identical,
exactly the
right?
same.
So,
Yeah.
and I think there's some value in just the presence. I know I slow down, and I think
very much so. If
the
you
police car as
see
well. So
the Main Street area, you'll see that.
Absolutely.
Our,
Just the revenues from the infractions with motor vehicle stops. First off, you hit the nail on the head. It looks like, it's about a 50%. So the education going along with these stops is working great. Now, just the revenues generated from the infractions, that actually goes to the state versus the town, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I don't have the exact numbers. There are some infractions where we get a small portion. It's not a large portion. The vast number of fines go to the state.
But just by seeing that numbers, that gives me a little comfort that, there's not 1,500 infractions either. So,
and some of those infractions come from accidents also.
Sure.
So they're not all from motor vehicle stops. Our
Absolutely.
officers are very fair.
Yep.
They use discretion well, and they believe in education, and the warning is a form of education.
And just my last point is on, I think there's been some conundrum with dispatchers and so overtime and just staffing in general. So any insight from your expertise coming into that?
And one piece of the insight is here. You
Yeah.
can see how this change allows us to focus more on dispatchers. Very important in that area also. Tomorrow we have testing being done for dispatch applicants. We've had 17 applicants. We're going to try to replace one that recently resigned to take another job. But we also want to add maybe a part-timer to fill some gaps and such. So we're aware of the issues with dispatchers and the overtime situation and the manpower situation. This helps us address it and focus, but we're also taking practical steps by giving tests as early as tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Just real quick, I was just looking at your budget and the mayor's budget with the overtime getting cut down, 100,000. Is that?
So I'll answer that, because it was my recommendation. So we have 5 new officers, and we've got a new contract that was done with the officers to change the timing. So with the new officers, you're not going to need as much overtime.
Overtime.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I mean, that's not just, it's not a number that is here and then it's going to have to creep up because it's.
Major crime happens, and if major crime happens, it may, but in a normal case scenario, we could work with it.
Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment the chief.
Absolutely.
Every time I run into you, you're always so pleasant, and I love the community.
You run into him. What are you doing?
Just the community idea, and to bring the police out to the community rather than have that fear factor that's there. And I can't compliment you enough, and love the new organizational chart. I'm way in favor of supporting you and your staff.
Thank you. I'm happy because I love the community and love the department I work with.
Absolutely.
Happy to have you here.
Chief, thank you very much for tonight. I know it's tough to be a police officer in these times and days. With social media and stuff, it's a tough
Sure is.
occupation these days. And you guys should be commended. I wanted to tag team a bit on the mayor, because something that's close to my heart was the opioids. on the drugs. And we'd be ignorant to ignore it that it's everywhere, whether it's in a small town, big town, and stuff. So my question to you, and maybe you already have something in place, I would love to have the police officers maybe go to the high school, maybe have a little learning center, have the kids come into the gym, some of the effects of it and stuff, because some of these kids think that it's not, they're immune to it. And they're young kids, they think they can conquer the world.
Right.
But this is serious.
It is serious. Our officers responded to 36 overdose calls last year. Over 20 of those, 22 of those, we used Narcan. Sometimes we hit them with Narcan 1, 2, 3, 4 times even. So officers are out there saving lives on a weekly basis, and it's a shame. We need to do something about it, and I agree with you.
So I would love, if you have something in place, or get something in place, to where you can have a group of officers go and explain to these kids the effects and what it's doing to their body and what can happen. Sometimes fear helps a little bit. I know it's tough love, but this is something where one death is one too many.
I'm glad we're in it together, and it's on my mind.
Okay, thank you.
I have a silly question, but I'm just, like to ask it. Not familiar with the term constable or matron. What are those positions for?
The constable line, I believe, is our extra duty officers and the officers out on the road. There's a
Side duty.
Side duty.
I believe that's what that line item here.
It's a $50,000 line.
Yep.
There's a revenue from that. There's a big revenue.
That's just a marker for the revenue.
It's a marker. I was saying, it was so specific.
And it's hard to say how much that will be each year. It's a variable.
Okay, I understand.
But it is an intake. It's a
You don't
revenue.
want to meet the matron. Ah, what is
Oh.
the matron?
That means you're in jail.
Any department in the state that has over, any town that has over 20,000 people, state law requires that we have a matron. We have females on the department who could help us with female-related prisoner issues, and that's what a matron is.
Oh. Glad I don't know that person. Thank you. You know anymore? No. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So touching back on what, actually first up,
Yes,
welcome
sir.
to the department.
Thank you, sir.
Second up, touching on what Trevor had talked about with the revenues from the tickets. Now, is that something that like the state looks at and says, okay, they collected this much in ticket revenue, and that helps towards like grants and whatnot?
No, and they intentionally don't do that. There isn't payment for the number of tickets we give out. There are statutes set on certain types of stops, and we get a small percentage of those. I don't have those numbers for you, but the vast number of infractions we give out, we do not get reimbursement for.
Okay. And then another thing I had a question on too was the additional lieutenant. Where's that on the budget?
So here's the plan, and if you give me this officer, if you give me this new officer, it's going to take me time to hire that person. We can't hire that person tomorrow. July 1st, even before July 1st, I can potentially advertise for that person. It'll take time to go through the process. It's a long process. It could take 6 to 8 weeks for us to even identify a candidate. And then it could even take longer for us to get an academy slot. It could take another 3 or 4 weeks. In that time that we didn't hire somebody, that salary that would have been approved would still be in the budget. So for $55,000, those officers make, that new officer would make about $1,000 a week, $1,100. 5 weeks, it'd be about $5,000. If I could delay that hiring for 5 weeks, those $5,000, that's the exact difference between a sergeant's pay and a lieutenant's pay. $89,000 for a sergeant, $93,000 for, or $94,000 for a lieutenant. I would delay the hiring for those 6 weeks.
Okay, so that's budgeted in the patrolman at the way with the fireman.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And I think that. And then the other thing I saw was the increase for sergeants from 600 to 712 for salaries. Was that just all the contractual?
Yes.
Okay. There's no additional sergeant or anything.
There would be one additional item in there. The contract negotiations now only has 1 step for a sergeant. There used to be 2 steps, a first level sergeant, a second level sergeant. Now they're merged and they're all 1 level at that higher level. So that's a small impact in there also.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other questions for the chief?
Motion to recess, Mr. Mayor.
Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, thank you all.
Lieutenant, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. And do we have a motion to recess on the town council side? We have a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Till tomorrow? Walter?
Board, do I have a motion to recess? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, for those of you, excuse me, for those of you who have not done so, the corrected audits are here. Please discard your old ones, and before you leave, pick up a new one.
The page of the book.
What?
Is it a page of the book?
It's entire book.
Okay.